Hey, what's going on, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be doing my mock draft 1.0. This is my official first mock draft. I've done mock drafts in the past, even done some with trades, but this is going to be as realistic as possible. I'm going to try to be, as how I think the draft is going to actually go. I'm probably going to do 2 or 3 more of these official mock drafts. And then, of course, last year I did one right before the draft, and I'm going to be streaming the draft on my channel. So make sure you tune into that on draft night just to check in. I don't really care if you stay the whole time. But this is also post free agency and post the combine. So there have been a lot of new information, such as Carolina being at the #1 overall pick. There have been I've done more film, more players have jumped into the first round. And so, let's get right into it. I don't think I'll be doing any trades in this one, since this is the first. This is supposed to be the grounded level one where I base the next couple of ones off of. So I will refrain from doing trades, but obviously there have been some that will be going on, or that it will be going on, such as the Aaron Rodgers trade, possibly if Lamar Jackson gets traded. We'll see how those end up, but I'm not going to be making any predictions until they're official. So for the Carolina Panthers, I think that they end up going with C.J. Stroud. Just Frank Reich likes to have taller quarterbacks. We've seen it with Phillip Rivers, Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz. He just likes to have taller quarterbacks. So, and C.J. Stroud, of course, listed here at 6'3", measured in at around 6'2", 210 for the combine. Very prototypical pocket passer. Had 2 great years at Ohio State. And, Carolina has not had that bad of an offseason either. But looking at the Houston Texans, I'm going to go with Bryce Young. They recently just got Dalton Schultz as of making this video. They also traded away Brandon Cooks for a 5th-round pick and a 6th. So they made some moves, and they've also bolstered up the offensive line. They got Shaq Thompson. They re-signed Laramie Tunsil to a big deal. So that could potentially work out immediately off the bat with Bryce Young, who is a very accurate quarterback who was able to carry Alabama last year. Obviously, he was a Heisman winner in his sophomore year. So I think that's the most predictable pick for Houston. For Arizona, they are a trade-down candidate. I think that with where they're at right now, Kyler Murray is injured. Don't know where he's going to be, if he's going to be able to start in week 1. They've lost a lot of depth. They've had a lot of players retire. They've had some releases and some bad injuries. DeAndre Hopkins is about to be traded. They have a lot of rebuilding to do, but with the new head coach hiring of Jonathan Gannon, I see them taking Will Anderson out of Alabama, who I think right now has jumped Jalen Carter as my #1 overall player in this draft class, a blue chip prospect. I love Will Anderson out of Alabama. Just shows sheer dominance, and he's a phenomenal athlete with a great bull rush, who I have my player comp as Khalil Mack. I think he's going to do phenomenal in the NFL, and he'll be able to replace J.J. Watt, who recently just retired. But he is going to end up be playing in a 4-3 defense. That's what the Eagles ran, a 4-3 with Jonathan Gannon. So we'll probably see Will Anderson as a 4-3 defensive end, which I don't think he projects as well as a 3-4 outside linebacker. So we'll see how that works out. For the Indianapolis Colts, I think they're going to end up taking Anthony Richardson. Steve Shaheen from the Eagles system, he was the offensive coordinator. They were able to develop Jalen Hurts over there. Let's see if they can develop Anthony Richardson, who is a 1-of-1 athlete. Of course, ran a 4.4 40-yard dash at 6'4", 244. I think he has great poise in the pocket. It looks like he's a little bit more pro-ready than I think others think he is, but he obviously has some mechanic concerns. He has big accuracy issues. But I mean, he has an incredible highlight reel, and his film leaves a lot to be desired, but he has a lot of raw athletic untapped potential that could be tapped by Shane Shaheen. With the new Indianapolis Colts. Moving on to the Seattle Seahawks, who got this from the Denver pick. I think they have a big conversation to whether they want to go with Jalen Carter or Tyree Wilson. Jalen Carter, obviously, I think I have him graded right now as my highest, as my number one player in this draft class. But he has some character concerns. He obviously was arrested and posted bail for racing on the highway that ended up leading to the death of a trainer and another Georgia defensive lineman. He was arrested a few weeks ago, going 89 in a 45, or was let go. Technically, should have gotten a ticket, but he also came in his pro day 9 pounds overweight, was 323, and cramped up, could not finish a drill, was panting. So a little bit of red flags with Jalen Carter, even though I think his talent is just so. I think I have him as a blue chip prospect, but I mean, it's tough to decide whether those character concerns are going to outweigh his ability on the field. I mean, his tape is phenomenal, but I just think he's going to have to slip a little bit. So we're going to go with Tyree Wilson. Love Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech. Had 7 sacks last year, and he had around 35 pressures, but a lot of those pressures, if you see on tape, he's right at the quarterback, but just didn't either get the sack down or the ball was thrown away. But that 6'6", 272-pound edge rusher, massive edge setter. He has incredible length. He has an 86-inch wingspan, and he has great hand. He has great pad level when he's pushing into offensive linemen, and has great bull rush as well, and is a very good edge setter and has excellent tackle length. I'm going to end up doing a video on Tyree Wilson very soon. Moving on to the Lions, I think Jalen Carter, his fall kind of stops here, where it's a phenomenal fit with the Lions system, but I think maybe Dan Campbell wouldn't love the fit culturally. I think Dan Campbell loves culture guys, and I'm pretty sure Jalen Carter was well liked in the Georgia locker room. I've seen conflicting reports, but scheme wise, Jalen Carter stuffs up the middle. He's going to end up being in the 3 tech over there, and he'll solve somewhat of their run defending issue. They were in the bottom 20 last year, and Jalen Carter immediately boosts up that ability. And then that Lions defense is looking even scarier. They recently signed C.J. Gardner-Johnson. They also signed Cameron Sutton to a 3-year deal. So they're looking pretty good. Moving on to the Raiders, in my head, I don't think they end up taking quarterback here. I don't think they're in a position. It doesn't look like they're in a position to take one. If they had a gutted roster and Devonta Adams requested a trade, similarly to if like the Cardinals needed a quarterback, I think that they would. But they recently signed Jimmy Garoppolo to a 3-year, $72 million deal. That just makes me believe that Will Levis probably doesn't get drafted to the Raiders, and I think they look towards maybe a cornerback acquisition. So I think Christian Gonzalez fits better there with the Raiders. They really don't have any cornerbacks on the roster. They've lost so much depth at the position. Damon Arnett released. Cameron Hayward left a few years ago. Damon Arnett, no. But they do have Nate Hobbs, who I really like. But Nate Hobbs is just a slot cornerback. I don't think he thrives going up against the number one wide receiver every single time. And Christian Gonzalez is a guy who has great size, great athletic ability. He's 6'1", he weighed in at 197 at the combine. He has great fluid hips, and he's good in man and zone. He was really good at Oregon last year. So, and also it's a huge position of need for the Raiders. They really don't have any cornerbacks outside of Nate Hobbs. And so I think with the Atlanta Falcons, this is where I would think that quarterback goes. Or it's either it goes with the Falcons, is either they take Will Levis or they take an edge rusher. Because I just don't really see them taking Will Levis here. They took a quarterback last year with Desmond Ridder out of Cincinnati. They also recently signed Taylor Heineke, and I don't think Will Levis really fits that system either. Arthur Smith has only signed mobile quarterbacks and not really Will Levis type of quarterbacks. I would be interested to see where Levis goes. I think that would be it would have to be a team in the bottom, such as maybe the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, maybe if the Ravens trade Lamar, maybe if I don't know, maybe if the Vikings want to trade up for a quarterback. Those are all interesting conversations. I just don't think Will Levis goes to one of these teams unless they pass up on a quarterback that I think has more potential or is better right now. But moving on to what I think the Falcons are going to do is I think they're going to draft edge rusher. They really generate zero pressure, and they don't defend the run well. And I think Luke Van Ness is able to get you that right away. He had 8 sacks last year at Iowa. 6'5", and he played a very good game against Peter Skronsky over here, tackle out of Northwestern, who, hey, they view as the number 1 tackle, and Luke Van Ness was blowing him off the line. Also had a great combine. I think it's a position of need it's a position of need for the Falcons, and Luke Van Ness, I have as a mid to late first round grade, and I wouldn't think it's too much of a reach at 8. Moving on to the Chicago Bears, of course, they were the number 1 overall pick, worst team in the league. But they've had some great offseason acquisitions. They got DJ Moore at wide receiver 1. They got a first-round pick next year. They got 2 seconds. They kind of rebuilt their defense a little bit. They signed some offensive line help as well. So what I think they probably should do is get their tackle 1, and I think that's going to end up being Paris Johnson. I think Paris Johnson probably goes first off the board, but my personal favorite is Broderick Jones. I think he offers a lot of athletic ability, and I think he offers a lot of poise. Allowed 0 sacks at Georgia last year. However, Paris Johnson is another guy who let up very low sack numbers. I think it was only 1. But Paris Johnson offers a little bit more length than Broderick Jones, and he also, I think, has more tackle potential. But those are 2 good offensive linemen, and whichever one Chicago values as their number 1 tackle, I think that they should jump and take one of them. Moving on to the Eagles at number 10, I have seen cornerbacks go very early to them. However, I don't think they necessarily go with their highest graded cornerback because, they still have Darius Slay for 2 more years. They have James Bradbury for another 3 years. They don't have anybody in the slot, but I don't think you take the number 10 overall pick for a slot. So it's either they take a high cornerback that has safety upside, that either be Witherspoon or that either be Joey Porter, whichever one they want, or they could reach potentially for, one of the guys that's higher on their board. But I think they potentially could end up going with edge rusher. But it's either, do you want to wait for an edge rusher, or do you want to go for, late? You want to get a cornerback laying in the wait. And I think that the more I've convinced myself over the span of this whole offseason to where I think they should really invest in a young, good cornerback now because they just have an older cornerback room. James Bradbury's over 30, Darius Slay's over 30, and you don't know when their production could drop off. And so you have that security in Devin Witherspoon, who I think is incredible. PFF has him as their highest graded cornerback. He allowed a passer rating of 25.3, which is absolutely stellar. That Illinois secondary was excellent the entire college football season last year. And their coach was hired to Purdue, their defensive coordinator. But Devin Witherspoon, I love. He's a primary man cornerback. I know that Philly loves to run both man and zone, but Devin Witherspoon thrives in man coverage and is definitely sticky cornerback, but his highlight reel mainly shows him hit sticking receivers. Devin Witherspoon definitely packs a punch and is a very, very solid tackler. He's a guy that projects a lot like how Jalen Ramsey did out of FSU, where he was a phenomenal tackler, phenomenal man cornerback. But moving on to the Titans, their biggest real need is wide receiver. However, I just don't think they end up doing that. I think that their entire identity is going to end up being the run game, and you cut Taylor Lewan this offseason, and so I think, in my opinion, Broderick Jones, tackle 1, 6'4", 300, and what was he? I think he's 310. Yeah, and Broderick Jones allowed 0 sacks last year, coming into the league a little early, redshirt sophomore. And here you can see 0 sacks. Also, and I think he offers a lot of athletic ability as well. I think he could be great in sweeps and in motion. So, moving on to the Houston Texans. I've had some choice words about the wide receiver class this year. I don't think it's as good as past classes. And, maybe I'm a little too critical. I made a video that got 230,000 views on TikTok or something, and then 12,000 on YouTube, where I called it the class, or where I gave some of my red flags for these receivers. I'm going to end up making an entire video on them. But I think Quentin Johnson offers a lot of what Bryce Young really needs, which is a safety valve receiver and somebody who's going to succeed after the catch. Now, Quentin Johnson doesn't have a great route tree at 6'3", 210, but I think he was a bit limited by Max Duggan last year. A lot of the balls that he was given were slightly underthrown, or the balls were just slightly able to hit his chest. He would grab the I'll try to show it on camera. He would try to grab the balls like this. He'd go like that, and he would catch it like that. Meanwhile, everybody wants Quentin Johnson to catch the balls like this. But those balls were not, but the balls thrown by Max Duggan were just not here. But Bryce Young, I think, will be able to put it here, which is where Quentin Johnson could really, really do some damage if the ball is thrown up here. But it really wasn't at TCU, which kind of makes his film look a lot worse and limits his potential. But so yeah, I think that's a good fit with Bryce Young there. Moving to the Jets. Jets are on the clock. A lot of people would want to go to Peter Skronsky, but the one thing about Peter Skronsky that I don't love, I don't know if they have it on PFF, but his wingspan, 79 inches. That is low for a tackle. That isn't low on the low end. That's very, very low. He clearly has very small arms, and it shows up on film a lot. I was doing a film review in class 2 Wednesdays ago, and when I was watching the Iowa tape, because I was trying to watch some Luke Van Ness, he was going T-Rex sometimes. It just looks like he's and then I tweeted out how he looks like a left guard playing tackle. He looks like a guard playing tackle. So I think he projects realistically as offensive guard 1 or 2. And I really don't even put him in the tackle category anymore. I just think he offers the most value to a team at guard than tackle. I think he could get blown off the line against NFL edge rushers. So that leads me to believe that I think I want to go with, for the Jets, Anton Harrison out of Oklahoma. He allowed the lowest sack percentage out of all of the tackles within their first year, and also allowed the lowest pressure percentage or pressure rate. Sorry, I don't know why I blanked on that. He allowed the lowest pressure rate out of the highest offensive tackles as well. Out of Paris Johnson, Broderick Jones, him, and Skronsky, he allowed the lowest pressure rate, which is very solid. The Jets' tackles have been in turmoil recently. Dwayne Brown is coming back for another year, though, so Anton Harrison doesn't really have to start right away. So he can, be in the wait for a little bit. Moving on to the New England Patriots. I don't know why they have quarterback as their first need. Their first need is definitely wide receiver. They need somebody who can separate and who can help Mac Jones out. And so I think that's going to end up being Jordan Addison out of USC. had a phenomenal year with Kenny Pickett at Pittsburgh, ended up transferring to USC with Caleb Williams, had a good year, smaller frame at 5'11", 173 pounds, however, very agile cornerback, great body control, someone that's kind of like Garrett Wilson, who won the Offensive Rookie of the Year last year, and I like that fit with Mac Jones. Jordan Addison mainly is going to be in the slot. Moving on to Green Bay, this is a team who is trading away Aaron Rodgers. They have Jordan Love, who's going to end up starting, and I think I would love for them to go get a big body tight end in Dalton Kincaid, who is 6'4", 240, great pass catching tight end, who led all of these tight ends, all the big tight ends in Mayer. Where is he? He led Mayer, Musgrove, and Washington in receiving yards and receptions at Utah. And, many project as the tight end 1 for this season. Daniel Jeremiah had him as a top, 10 prospect for him. But, tight end is a young quarterback's favorite friend or best friend. And I think that's a great fit in Green Bay, where you're losing Mercedes Lewis as well. And moving on to Washington, this is a team who definitely could have Will Levis on their board. I'm pretty sure Sam Howell is. I don't know if he's 100% starting or not. That's what Ron Rivera said. So I think I'm gonna take his word on it. Sam Howell, 5th round pick out of UNC. So I'm going to take his word on it. I'm going to say that the Washington doesn't take quarterback, and they're going to go with a cornerback with Joey Porter Jr. Washington's a little thin at that position, and Joey Porter Jr. offers a ton of length with an 81-inch wingspan, plays in the receiver's hip pocket, although he doesn't have great hip flexion and mobility, and doesn't also offer the greatest deep field speed. He ran around a 4.47, 4.46, I think. He's a good cornerback. He's gonna cause a lot of havoc at the catch point with those long arms. Like Joey, I love this cornerback class in general. Christian Gonzalez, Devin Witherspoon, and Joey Porter Jr. are all top 10 prospects in my opinion. Moving on to the Steelers, I'm going to take. I think potentially it's a little early for offensive tackle. So I'm going to go with Deonte Banks out of Maryland. Pittsburgh, thin at the cornerback position right now. They lost Cameron Sutton, their cornerback 1 this offseason, to the Lions. 3 years, $33 million. And Deonte Banks is just another very good cornerback. Probably, I don't know where he projects the best. But yeah, Deonte Banks. He offers another guy who offers a lot of great length, 6'2", 205 as well. Another versatile cornerback. He's like a L'Jarius Sneed type of cornerback where he's gonna force a ton of fumbles. He's gonna do a lot of things, like a Swiss Army knife kind of at cornerback. And he's another great man cornerback. There are a lot of great man cornerbacks in this class, but. Another guy, position of need, and another great player. Cornerback class is a stellar one. So the Lions, you take Jalen Carter with your 1st overall pick, and so now what do you do? I think for them, I think you could even go with another cornerback at this point if you wanted to, because I think it's a little early for the linebacker. Yeah, all right, let's go with. I don't know why Keely Ringo and Carl Phillips are so low on their board, but for the Lions, let's go with Keely Ringo. Keely Ringo, guy that thrives in man cover, or probably projects best as a man cornerback. Had a pick 6 in the national championship 2 years ago against Alabama. Although this is a guy who isn't great at route recognition at the cornerback position. We could see that with Marvin Harrison Jr. when he was biting on a lot of false routes. But he's a guy who offers top-end speed with great length, 6'2", 210, but he's going to run, or he ran in the 4.4s, but he ran in the 4.3s, actually. I think he ran a 4.35. So he's a guy that offers top-end speed with elite length. We've seen that with Tariq Woolen, And I think if you let Keely Ringo sit in the Lions system, who have Aaron Glenn as the defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn, ex-Jets cornerback. He was a cornerback coach before he became the defensive coordinator for the Lions. If you can develop Keely Ringo, you could have a beast at the cornerback position. But they're pretty okay at cornerback right now. They obviously have Cameron Sutton, Emmanuel Mosley on a 1-year deal. They've got Jeff Okudah still on his rookie deal, Amani Oruwariye as well. And now you add Keely Ringo to that team as well. I think Keely Ringo could also potentially play safety. He has some safety flexibility even too. And so now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I have them going with Will Levis. Tampa Bay Buccaneers are extremely thin at the quarterback position. They have Kyle Trask as their quarterback 1 right now, and I just don't think that's gonna yield any good results. They also signed Baker Mayfield, and I don't think Baker Mayfield yields that great results. They also only have him on a 1-year deal. They're in a perfect spot to take quarterback here, and I think with Will Levis, that actually works for their system because they're gonna have a big-bodied receiver in Mike Evans, who gets down the field well, and then you have Chris Godwin, who plays at the Y at the slot, and who is another guy who gets open, is a great route runner that will help Will Levis. I think they've got a good situation for him over there, but I just don't think Will Levis goes this far down the board. A team is going to trade up for one of those quarterbacks, and I think we could see that potentially happen at the 7 or the 8 or the 9 range, or potentially even the 3, where a team goes up for Anthony Richardson and then the Colts have to go with Will Levis if they don't trade up. But the Seattle Seahawks are back on the board, and I see them I see them taking O'Cyrus Torrence. I like O'Cyrus Torrence a lot. He's a great run blocking guard. He has great IQ as well. And another big guard over here at 6'5", 347. I think he weighed in at the combine at like 335 or something. I think he dropped a good amount of pounds. But really like O'Cyrus Torrence. And for the Seattle Seahawks, that's probably their biggest need. That's technically their second biggest need because of Tyree Wilson. I think that edge was their biggest need, and now they've got their second biggest need. Moving on to the Chargers, going to have them going with a wide receiver, and I really like Zay Flowers here. Zay Flowers is a crafty receiver who has great route running, bulked up for the combine as well, had some weight concerns at Boston College, but bulked up to 182 pounds for the combine, which was a very good sign. Another agile receiver who's phenomenal after the catch and who has great body control. And I really like that selection for the Chargers because, Keenan Allen is a guy who's losing his ability. As he's gotten older, he's been dealing with more injuries, and his separation has decreased. And then Mike Williams doesn't get separation at all. He's just a deep threat, and he either does go routes or in routes, and is a contested catch. He just does contested catches. So I think that offers a lot of flexibility for that offense. Moving on to the Ravens, I think this has to be a receiver, and I'm going to go with Jackson Smith-Njigba because, Lamar Jackson really just doesn't have anybody to throw to, and that's why he's so disgruntled. You got Mark Andrews, but Mark Andrews only offers so much at the tight end position. So we're going to give them Jackson Smith-Njigba to pair with Rashad Bateman. I'm going to put Jackson Smith-Njigba in the slot. That's what he does best. Of course, Ohio State did have sort of an inflated year when he had almost 1,600 yards and 9 touchdowns because with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, there had to be one receiver open, and that just ended up being Jackson Smith-Njigba because, you really can't cover both of those receivers and another first-round pick receiver. So, Jackson Smith-Njigba, he had a phenomenal game in the Rose Bowl with 380 yards and 3 touchdowns, and I'd like to fit a lot with Lamar Jackson. Moving on to the Minnesota Vikings, they're just flat out going to need cornerback because they're just so thin at the position. and you're going to get a guy like Cam Smith, who I think has a lot of upside, but is still raw at the position. Sorry, I was meant to show his height and weight. But he does offer a good amount of size at 6 foot around 190. Still a little raw at the position, but he has a lot of potential. Potentially as a lockdown quarterback. Another guy at South Carolina, good at man, but is a little bit better at zone than I think some people think. And then mainly for the Minnesota Vikings, they're just so thin at the cornerback position. Last year, that was a massive issue. They think they led the league in passing yards allowed, or they were like 32nd in passing defense. So they need to improve that passing defense so much. But they do have Brian Flores, defensive coordinator out of the Miami system, ex-head coach. They signed Byron Murphy Jr. as well, who I think that was a very good signing. So bolster up that secondary. That's what Brian Flores loves, to have lockdown secondary players. Moving on to the Jaguars, I think that their intentions move more to offensive linemen. They lose Juwan Taylor, who is a massive part of their offensive line. He goes to the Kansas City Chiefs on a 4-year, $80 million deal. And I really love Darnell Wright, as you see, right tackle. Also has left tackle flexibility, played left tackle in 2021, but he had some phenomenal games this year at Tennessee, showing how he has stalwart potential. Another big guy. It came in at the combine at 6'5", 330. But if you watch his film against Will Anderson, he has potential to knock out some very strong edge rushers. And I like the fit with Jacksonville as well. Moving on to the Giants. The Giants are kind of screwed because they don't necessarily get the best wide receiver on their board. But I like Josh Downs a lot out of North Carolina. Projects best as a slot cornerback, as a 5'10". Another lower weight guy at 175 pounds. But great slot guy, had 11 touchdowns as well at North Carolina. And then for the Giants, they find more wide receiver talent out of the draft, Moving on to the Dallas Cowboys. This is a team that I can see taking a Swiss Army knife kind of guy like Brian Branch. Love Brian Branch out of Alabama, 5'11". Offers a lot. As you can see, they moved him around a lot at Alabama. 136 slots in the box. Played a hell of a lot in the slot. He could play deep. Had 25 snaps there. So Dallas can move him around a lot, and I think they need somebody like that who has that flexibility. Going from the slot, going from the safety, going from potentially the box, where they could do a lot of things with him and boost that defense. Defense is already really good. They got Stephon Gilmore. They don't really need cornerback now because they have Stephon Gilmore and they have Trayvon Diggs, but they potentially still need a little bit of safety help that can use some Brian Branch. I think they didn't have a lot of blitzing packages that I saw for the Cowboys, and they could add that level to their defense now, which is already so good with Micah Parsons. Moving on to the Buffalo Bills, gonna have them going with Bijan Robinson. This is a very obvious pick. The Buffalo Bills don't have the greatest rushing offense, and Bijan Robinson offers so much at the position. Has phenomenal vision, contact balance, and has breakaway speed. Ton of great awareness, and is great at breaking tackles. He's one of the best running back prospects that we've seen since Saquon Barkley. And for the Buffalo Bills, they need that rushing upside. It can't be Josh Allen and Josh Allen alone. Gonna get Bijan Robinson. That's gonna be an awesome pick. Moving on to the Bengals, they don't necessarily need tackle. They don't really need tackle right now because they just signed Orlando Brown Jr. and they still have Lyle Collins, so I think they're okay at the position. But I would throw in a wrinkle here. I would love for them to draft Jahmyr Gibbs out of Alabama. This is an Alvin Kamara clone. He's a guy who is a phenomenal pass catcher and who has exceptional acceleration. Ran in the low 4.4s as well, and at Alabama last year, he ran for 6.1 yards a carry, which was insane. I loved him coming out of Georgia Tech as well. Wish he would have gotten more attempts, but The guy, great receiving back. Look, 300 yards in his freshman year, 470, then 444. And I'll end up doing a full scale video on him, but I love Bijan Robinson. And then for the Bengals, he's going to a team that's likely going to cut Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon's been had some videos come out where he's I'm just gonna domestic issues. And then you lose Samaje Perine this offseason, who is your primary receiving back. And so you get Jahmyr Gibbs, who is not an every down back, but he's going to be a phenomenal rusher and pass catcher. And so moving on to the Saints, they need defensive lineman help. They've lost a lot of defensive lineman depth. They lost Marcus Davenport. They've lost Sky Turtle. I don't know how to pronounce his name. They've been losing a lot of defensive lineman depth over the last couple of years. So we're going to get Brian Brzee. This is a guy who, I don't know why I pulled away his stats. This is a guy who, did not have phenomenal production in college, had 8 sacks according to PFF, didn't have many hurries, left 2021 with a massive ACL injury, had some tragic family issues with the death of his sister to cancer, dealt with a lot of illness over this season at Clemson as well. But this is a guy who was an ex-5-star player. He came out, I think he was the number one overall player in 2020, coming out of high school. Also performed very well at the combine, looked very healthy. And this is a guy who could definitely sneak into the first round, even ahead of potentially his teammate Myles Murphy, who maybe could go ahead of him. And so then the transitioning to that, I think that Myles Murphy goes to the Eagles, because the Eagles are another team who have lost a lot of defensive lineman depth as well. You still got Hassan Reddick on the outside, and you still have Fletcher Cox you retained, but you lost Javon Hargrave, which was a massive blow. You have Jordan Davis, who does not play a heavy amount of snaps. He's a pure run stuffer. And I'd like to, and you do have Brandon Graham for one more year, but you slide Myles Murphy into there to increase your defensive depth, which they've already done, with Devin Witherspoon in this draft. Go get Myles Murphy, who offers a ton of upside. Another guy who is great length, great run defender, however, not the greatest edge setter. Sometimes he'll stray too far on the outside, and he'll lose the battle to the offensive lineman, allowing for a big gap in the run game. But that length kind of makes up for it, because he'll be able to reach out and get the guy. And then with the Kansas City Chiefs, my last pick is going to end up being, where is he? Jalen Hyatt. Sorry. Jalen Hyatt is going to end up being my last pick of the draft. I really like what he offers for the Chiefs. He's going to offer deep threat ability at the slot position or at the Y. On his film shows him being wide open every single time he gets a touchdown. He creates so much separation due to his speed, and it does have that elite ability for the wide receiver. And then with Patrick Mahomes does very well with deep threats who are open down the field. So this is my first official basically mock draft. But let me know your guys' thoughts. Let me know some of your favorite players for the draft class. Let me know who you think your team can pick. And then make sure you go check out my player breakdowns that I do on my YouTube channel. Go in the description and watch those videos. They're very informative about the players in this draft class. But thank you for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.